So this is a very, very delayed video for Kansei, the visual novel that I started quite a while back. And I do have some sort of reason / excuse for this. I actually recorded the entire route already. Both of the variations of the Find the Killer end. And then I edited everything, put it all together. I think all I had to do was just put the audio and video together, or I might have even done that too. And then I put it off for a day or two, and when I went back to finish it off, I found out that I had accidentally deleted the video file. So I was really, really frustrated and mad that I lost all that work, and I just could not motivate myself to redo it. Thing is, I still have the audio file of the playthrough and the ending, but I just didn't have the video, so then I considered just going through and recording video only and stuff, but then timing it with how long it takes me to say the line would be it's just too much work. So I threw it away for a while because I got really frustrated / sad that happened, and I just didn't want to look at this game anymore. But yeah, so end of my story. I finally got the motivation to go back to this game and redo this route so that you guys can see what happens. Now, one problem though is that with the VNs and the REMP engine, which is what this is on, you can skip text that you've already seen, and when doing a new route and recording for the first time, I could have skipped everything that I'd seen already really easily. But because I've already done this route, I'm gonna have to just know which ones, or try to remember which ones were seen only in the SD route, and then show you guys the ones in the killer ending. I think I was considering going through my audio file and just going off of that, but it's 50 minutes long, and I think I'll only miss 1 or 2 lines or something, so it should be okay. The killer, this isn't really the best ending anyways, and if you guys really want to find, explore everything in this game, you guys can get the game on the website, which I will link as always. This is just this isn't the true ending anyway, so it's okay if you miss just a little bit. I mean, I'm a completionist, but I'm sorry, I can't. It's just, yeah, it's just difficult because if I could undo the skip text of stuff that I did in the last playthrough, but yeah, that's impossible. Alright, so with my super long, unrelated kind of rant, I'll just go right in and show you how to find out who the killer is. So to get the Find the Killer ending, everything at the beginning is pretty much the exact same. The first major difference is when you are, after you find out that, or sense that Mr. Otten has died, Detective Gursky sends Naoki down to the basement to reset the power, and he really doesn't want to. In the SG route, you have to just let him go, and then you read the body, but to get the Find the Killer ending, you have to volunteer to go in his place. So this will open up different areas, well, one different area, which is what will get the Find the Killer ending. So let's get started. I feel kind of bad for him, and why don't I go down there instead?
You?
Yeah, why not? I know how to flip a few switches.
Yeah, he could do it.
Detective Gursky shrugs.
Sure, why not?
All right, the reboot process is fairly simple. Just flip all the switches off, then on, then push the reset button.
Okay. I head down the stairs and back down the staircase. The door opens for me without any resistance. The basement is piled up high with wooden crates and dusty boxes. I wonder what Mr. Otten keeps in here. The switch box is on the far wall. I pry the cover open, and it opens with a rusty squeal. The inside is just as Sophia described. I quickly flip the switches according to her instructions, and the lights switch off, leaving nothing but the eerie glow of the emergency lights. I hit the reset button, and after a few seconds, I hear a quiet hum. The lights switch back on, and I race back to the main hallway. Detective Gursky stops me as soon as I reach the top of the stairs.
Sorry, kid. There's nothing you can do now.
What do you mean? Detective Gursky glances at the office door as Sophia exits. She looks pretty shaken. Naoki is at her side, supporting her.
You were right about Mr. Otten. He's dead.
What? What happened?
He was already dead when we got there. Sophia tried to revive him, but...
Naoki stops and glances at Detective Gursky uncomfortably.
I stopped her. It was too risky.
What do you mean?
It's not important.
Detective Gursky approaches Sophia and places a hand on her shoulder.
Sophia, I know you're upset, but we need to contact the police. My phone isn't getting any signal.
All signal is blocked off in this place. Mr. Otten's orders, of course.
Is there a landline I can use then?
In there.
Sophia lets go of Naoki and numbly points at the study door.
I'll show you.
As the two of them leave, Lee approaches us. Any sign of her distress from before has disappeared. Her expression is placid.
He's gone.
Yeah. Naoki? What happened in there?
Well...
Naoki shifts back and forth as if he's not sure he should be saying anything.
Mikolash checked his pulse, but he was already dead.
You said Sophia tried to revive him?
Yeah, she was going to use CPR, but Detective Gursky stopped her. He said that Mr. Otten looked like he had been poisoned, and she might get poisoned herself if she tried mouth to mouth.
Naoki sighs. He looks pretty shaken himself.
We should tell Aki what happened.
But we don't know where she is.
She's coming.
Lee turns towards the staircase just as Aki reaches the top.
Hey, what happened? The lights went out for a moment.
Mr. Otten died.
Died? How?
Poisoning, it seems.
Did you read his last moments?
I'm afraid not. Gursky won't let me in there.
What about you? Did you see it?
Aki turns to Naoki and he nods.
I got it.
Good, then we'll take a look at it later.
Detective Gursky exits the study with Sophia. She appears to have calmed down, but her body still trembles every time she breathes in.
The police are on their way. It's a bit of a drive for them, so we'll have to sit tight until then. I suggest we all wait downstairs. As I don't have any jurisdiction here, it's only a suggestion.
He looks directly at me.
But it's the best option if you want to stay unnoticed.
He turns and leads Sophia down the staircase, helping her with one step at a time. Aki frowns as they leave.
Always the gentleman.
Huh?
Nothing. Anyway, we should probably follow his suggestion and head downstairs. We wouldn't want to get into any more trouble than we already are.
So the next part that is important is to either gain or not gain Sophia's trust for this ending. So if you don't get her trust, you get the bad ending, and if you get her trust, you get the good ending. So I'm just going to do the bad ending first, just because I like usually doing that first. Save the best part for last. So she's asking how you know about that Mr. Otten died, and If you are going to not gain her trust for the bad ending, you could just say it's just a lucky guess.
Truly?
Sophia's eyes narrow. That was definitely not the right answer. Well,
You're telling me that out of nowhere you just guessed that something was wrong with Mr. Otten?
Yes?
And this guess was so compelling that you pounded on his office door until we finally opened it?
I guess so.
Stop lying to me. Mr. Otten is dead, and I know you're involved. Why else would he have been so afraid of you?
Hang on. Kansei didn't do anything. He just happened to be here today. If it weren't for him, you might not even know that Mr. Otten is dead yet.
Sophia's glare softens, but she doesn't take her eyes off of me.
Then where did this lucky guess come from? Surely you don't scream outside everyone's door the moment you guess that something has gone wrong.
If I were the killer, I wouldn't tell you that Mr. Otten died. I'd run away.
The criminal always returns to the scene of the crime.
Fine. Then how did I do it? I never even saw Mr. Otten. Sophia's expression wavers for a moment. She can't actually think of a good answer.
It was you. It had to have been you.
I purse my lips and shake my head. Nothing I say will matter at this point in time.
Sophia, I'm so sorry about Mr. Otten, but he's the one who called us here, remember?
Naoki tentatively places his hand on Sophia's shoulder. She flinches, but she doesn't move away.
I know it's scary, and I know that it's confusing. But I know you're a smart woman, and you know that what you're accusing him of doesn't make sense. We're here to help.
Sophia breathes in slowly.
I'm sorry. I'm jumping to the strangest conclusions here. I must not be in a very good frame of mind right now.
Sophia sighs and shuts her eyes. She looks like she wants to cry again. I'm sorry. You really cared about Mr. Otten, didn't you? For a moment, Sophia doesn't respond. Her shoulders shudder as she takes in a deep breath. Finally, she opens her eyes and speaks in barely more than a whisper.
I don't know what I'm going to do now that he's gone.
I'm so sorry.
Naoki places a gentle hand on Sophia's shoulder. For a moment, I feel strange. She definitely sounds sincere, but something about what she just said sounds off.
I'm sorry. I just really want to find the person who did this. If there's anything you need to know, just ask, okay?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Next up, we head over to the basement, which is unlocked. Normally not unlocked in the SD route, but since you went there already, it lets you go back. The door actually opened. I guess Sophia hasn't changed my permissions from before. Cool. Just gonna explore these boxes. This box is empty. Oh, this box is full of papers. They all look pretty old. Experiment results? I don't understand what any of this is about. Maybe I should ask someone trustworthy. I'll take a few of these pages and leave the rest here for now. So everything else, you basically just have to explore every location, I believe, and wait for Aki to show up again. Okay, just before Aki shows up, you can actually bring up the papers to Detective Gursky. Just go up to him and you can say, I found a bunch of these papers in the basement. Any idea what they're about? Detective Gursky takes the sheets from me and pages through them carefully. With each page he reads, his eyes widen.
He was told to destroy all of this.
What? What is it?
Old research, very old research that certain people in the government want to pretend never happened.
How do you know this?
It's a long story, kid.
It's not like I have anywhere to be. He sighs.
Let's put it this way. A few years ago, I stumbled upon a lot of things I wasn't supposed to. Specifically, an old experiment that William Otten was involved with. I got in a lot of trouble for what I saw. I was supposed to be erased from the system entirely, but I was given a second chance, transferred to Edgewater, and stopped the twins who were running around the city causing trouble. They figured if they stuck me here, I'd be out of the way, and I'd have my hands full with the twins. I don't think they expected me to catch them so soon.
So you're the one who caught Aki and Naoki?
I was Aki's arresting officer, yes. We technically never caught Naoki.
He got away? I'm having trouble thinking of Naoki as the sort of guy who could run from the law for very long.
Aki went down fighting so that he could escape. We spent 3 days looking for him and not a thing. Then, less than an hour after she cut a deal, he showed up on our doorstep to turn himself in, like magic.
He scowls.
Part of me suspects that she planned it all in advance.
So after going around and talking to every single person and exhausting all the questions, Aki will finally show up in the lobby and tell you about how none of the staff are paid. And then it gets a little bit different since you didn't see the crime scene. So,
If we want to get to the bottom of this, we're going to need another look at the crime scene.
but Detective Gursky's guarding the door. I doubt he'd let even you in.
Oh, I'm the last person he'd let in. But we don't need the real thing. We've got something just as good.
Hello.
Naoki? What are you doing here? I thought you were with Sophia.
I called him here, of course.
Aki glances around the room quickly before taking a step towards her brother.
This is what my Kansei is actually good for.
Aki takes Naoki's hand in hers and closes her eyes.
Naoki, show us.
The world around me fades to black for a moment, and I find myself standing in a luxurious office. The world looks a little warmer and softer than I'm used to. It's kind of surreal. On the ground before me is a dead body. Mr. Otten, I assume. Are we in the office?
Of course not. We're still in the main lobby. You're looking at Naoki's memory right now. My Kansei allows me to share the thoughts of whoever I touch.
Okay. So what do we do now?
Have a look around, of course. Does anything look suspicious?
So the important thing is to look at the alcohol. Some sort of alcohol. I'd guess cognac? I don't know how to pronounce it. By the color. The ice in the glass hasn't melted yet, which means Mr. Otten was drinking this right before he died. Maybe he was poisoned.
So, what do you think?
If I had to say, I'd guess the cognac on his desk. The ice wasn't melted, so he poured it recently. And he didn't get to drink very much of it, so it may have been the source of the poison.
That's logical, but how could anyone poison his drink in the first place?
Maybe the killer poisoned the cognac before giving it to Mr. Otten.
If that's the case, then the murderer could be anyone.
So if we found out who gave him the cognac, we'd find the killer.
Then I guess we'll just have to figure out who bought it. Sophia probably knows who's given him gifts lately. So after that comes the second part of gaining Sophia's trust, when you ask her about if anyone in her family suffers from a medical condition, after hearing about how she's not paid and she's working for her husband. She asks how you know about that, and to get the bad ending, you just tell her that you know I was just asking. She eyes me carefully, weighing whether or not I'm telling the truth.
My husband is very ill right now, but it has nothing to do with Mr. Otten or anyone else here.
Are you sure? Sophia's eyes narrow.
Please do not pry into my private life. It's very rude.
Next up, you go back to Aki and you tell her there's a new dialogue option saying, I've explored as much of the house as I can.
But?
Well, I haven't gotten a good look at the security room. Kevin's always in there, and I don't want to be poking around while he's watching.
Good point. I wonder if there's a way to get him out of the room for a while.
Even if we could, the door would lock behind him. There's no way to open it without him. The only way to get in is to reset the power and override the system. You can't override the security system without a code. Aki's eyes suddenly light up.
So what you're saying is it is possible to enter without him.
No,
You just said that we could get it if we had a code.
but we don't. I don't think Sophia's just going to tell us hers.
I'm pretty sure she already did.
What do you need?
Naoki appears beside me. He looks a little out of breath, as if he ran here as quickly as he could. Wait, did you just call him here?
Yeah.
Aki stares at me as if this should be obvious.
It's better than sending a text, although the range isn't that great.
She laughs.
But first things first.
She turns to Naoki and places her palms together, almost as if she's in prayer.
I need a little favor, brother dearest.
He frowns.
Every time you say that we do something illegal.
Well, it's for a good cause.
You always say that, too.
I suppose I do.
She smiles widely, showing off her teeth in a cheesy grin.
But you'll help, right?
He sighs.
What do you want?
When you guys first opened Mr. Otten's office, you saw Sophia's security code, right?
Naoki looks around apprehensively. It seems he already knows where this conversation is going.
Well, we're just going to try a little experiment and see if it works on other doors, like the one on the security room.
She folds her arms across her chest and draws her back up. She paces between Naoki and I like a general giving orders.
I'll distract Kevin while Con turns the power off. Kevin will no doubt head to the basement to fix the problem. Once the power's back on, Naoki will use Sophia's code to get the two of you access to the security room. I'll stall Kevin long enough for you two to get a quick look. See what you can get and get out of there. Got it?
Naoki sighs. He looks resigned.
Got it.
Aki turns and looks at me expectantly. Yeah, I got it. I try not to sound too resentful. It's not an entirely terrible plan, but I don't like having Aki boss me around.
Good, then wait for my signal.
Aki strides down the hallway and knocks on the door to the security room. After a few moments, Kevin opens it and lets her inside.
All right, Con, you're up.
As soon as Aki starts speaking, I turn and walk down the hallway with long, quick strides. I hurry past the rows of doors and I quickly make my way down to the basement. Once I arrive at the basement, I flip all the switches off. The room plunges into darkness.
Good job, now get out, and quick!
I race up the stairs and duck into the bathroom. Outside, I can hear muffled voices. Aki is talking to Kevin about something as she follows him down to the basement. After a few seconds, the lights flicker back on. At the same time, I hear the basement door slam shut.
All right, guys, get going!
I crack the door to the bathroom open slowly. In the hallway, Naoki is already busy punching in a string of numbers into the security pad. His fingers race over the buttons, tapping each one in an even rhythm. The box beeps softly and the door opens. The two of us leap through it and begin our search through the meager contents of the security room. So, the main thing that you have to look for here, I believe, was here. I kneel beside the computer to inspect it. It looks like it was custom built, and there's nothing suspicious about it. As I stand, I notice a yellow bit of cardboard sandwiched between the computer and the glass desk. What's this? I pull it out gently. It's a folder stuffed with papers. This looks promising.
Con, Naoki, we're out of time. Get out of there!
I roll up the papers quickly and stuff them under my shirt. Naoki and I make a mad dash for the door. We burst out into the hallway, shut the door quickly behind us, then attempt a casual walk back into the lobby. The casual walk turns out to be more of a pitiful swagger, but thankfully there's no one in the lobby to see us. After a few minutes, Aki rejoins us.
So, find anything?
I show her and Naoki the papers that I discovered.
These numbers are pretty recent. I see a lot of references to other companies, but I'm not sure what they mean.
Likewise. Aki and Naoki both furrow their brows in concentration as they examine the papers. Despite their wildly different personalities, they still reflect each other's actions. Finally, Aki sighs and hands the papers back to me.
I've got nothing.
I take the pages back from her and roll them up again. Maybe someone else can tell me what they mean. So the person that you want to ask about the papers is then Sophia. I found these papers lying around. They're about some, other companies, I think. What are they, exactly?
Those are private documents that you should not be reading.
Well, seeing as Mr. Otten's dead, I don't think he'll mind.
His passing does not give you the right to pore over his belongings. I will not discuss his private business with you.
Then you can ask her, did anyone buy some cognac for Mr. Otten recently?
That's an odd question. Is there any reason you want to know?
Oops, good question. What should I tell her? We think it might be related to the murder.
Are you sure?
Surprise registers on Sophia's face for a brief moment.
Well... You don't think his cognac was poisoned, do you?
What? Well, it certainly looks that way. The symptoms are all consistent. The pale skin, the sweating.
I see.
Sophia looks like she's deep in thought. Maybe I shouldn't have told her about the cognac after all.
I'm sorry, I'm really not feeling well. I'd like to take a nap now, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. Li Mei is standing outside the security room, eyes shut and hand pressed against the door. As soon as she hears me, she looks up. Her eyes are wide with fear. What's wrong?
Sophia is in here. She's scared.
What happened?
I don't know.
I grab the door handle and pull. The door doesn't budge. Go get Aki. Li Mei nods and runs down the hallway. Sophia, are you in there? I pound on the door, hoping for a response.
Kansei!
Kevin rushes up to me. He looks out of breath. What's going on?
It's Liam! He went nuts and tried to kill us both!
Both?
Sophia's in there. He locked her in here and she's hurt. I can't!
He pauses for another breath.
I can't open it without your help. The basement, downstairs. You've got to turn off the power.
Sure. I turn and race towards the basement. I pause for a second to let my eyes adjust to the dim lighting before I open the switch box. As I open the panel, the basement door slams shut behind me. I run towards the door and pull on the handle, but it doesn't budge. Kevin, what's going on? I pound on the door with my fists, hoping to attract someone's attention. Hey, I'm trapped down here. I'm in the basement. I press my ear against the door, but I can't hear anything outside. I grab the handle and pull it again, but the door doesn't even budge. Again, I slam my fist into the door, but it's useless. Hey, someone let me out. I have to get everyone's attention somehow. I run back to the circuit box and flip all the switches. The lights in the basement immediately shut off. I stand in the dark room, straining to hear anything, Something. Anything. Any clue that someone knows I'm down here. I hear some shouting, but it's so muffled that I can't even tell who's speaking.
Con, turn the power back on. I'm sending Naoki to get you.
With a sigh of relief, I turn the power back on. Looks like my message was received after all. I hear a beeping noise, and the basement door slides open. I stumble out and nearly run into Naoki. What happened to Kevin?
He's gone.
What? And Naoki looks at me apologetically.
All the doors in the house unlocked. Kevin and Liam are both gone.
And Sophia?
She's not doing well. Someone hit her on the head pretty hard. Aki's trying to stop the bleeding, but...
I'm sorry. I could have stopped this. I should have stopped this.
It's not your fault. You can't blame yourself for the actions of others.
So what now? Naoki sighs and turns slowly.
Wait for the police to show up, I guess.
I watch him trudge up the stairs, and I follow reluctantly. He's right. There's nothing else I can do now. So now on to the good ending. I'm going to start off by telling her the truth about how I have some sort of sixth sense, which told me that Mr. Otten was murdered. I'm going to go through it kind of quickly because I answered the same answers in the SG route.
A sixth sense? As in psychic?
I guess you could call it that.
Can you give me details on how it works?
Whoa, she actually sounds like she might believe me. I can't really say. I just feel things. I get sick sometimes, and then I know something bad has happened. Naoki's staring hard at me, as if I should keep quiet. I guess just talking about my Kansei is a bad idea. Still, I feel as if she deserves at least a partial truth.
I see. I suppose it's different then.
Different? From what?
Many years ago, Mr. Otten experimented with extending the mental capacities of human beings. It's not like what you described, though.
What sort of experiments?
I don't really know much about it. It was a long time ago, before I started working for him. He just mentioned it in passing once, so I thought maybe that had something to do with it. He was terribly drunk at the time, though, so I suppose he might not have even been telling the truth. I'm sorry, I'm jumping to the strangest conclusions here. I must not be in a very good frame of mind right now.
Sophia sighs and shuts her eyes. She looks like she wants to cry again. I'm sorry. You really cared about Mr. Otten, didn't you?
I don't know.
It's all the same. So, part 2 of gaining Sophia's trust. Does anyone in your family suffer from any kind of medical condition? Sophia places her hands on her hips and gives me a sharp glare.
Has someone been talking about my husband?
Liam told me about him.
That boy.
Sophia's expression tightens for a brief moment, but it doesn't take her long for her to regain her composure.
Yes, my husband's heart is failing, and Otten Engineering is the only company with the technology to keep him alive. Mr. Otten allowed my husband preferential treatment in exchange for my services. I may not receive a paycheck, but I value my husband's well-being even more.
She clasps her hands together and straightens her back.
Now please do not pry any further into my private life.
Then, if you have her trust, the questions about the papers and the cognac play out a little differently.
Those are some of his ledgers from one of his smaller companies.
I didn't know he owned other companies.
Well, he's bought most of them up under various names or through organizations that he heads.
Meaning?
Meaning that his ownership of these companies is not readily evident.
So he owns them in secret?
Yes.
Why?
Many of these companies are financial institutions. His ownership of them could be seen as a conflict of interest with his business decisions at Otten Engineering.
Did anyone buy some cognac for Mr. Otten recently?
That's an odd question. Is there any reason you want to know?
We think it might be related to the murder.
Are you sure?
Surprise registers on Sophia's face for a brief moment.
Well... You don't think his cognac was poisoned, do you?
What? Well, it certainly looks that way. The symptoms are all consistent. The pale skin, the sweating.
If he were poisoned, what kind of poison are we talking about?
What do you mean? Sophia paces back and forth on the floor, speaking rapidly under her breath.
Why didn't I remember until now?
She berates herself. Sophia spins around to face me again.
This poison we're talking about, is it a sort of clear, oily liquid?
Sophia, do you know what it is? She hurries to the cupboard and pulls out a white linen napkin.
I just hope it's still here.
She pulls out a plastic bin from underneath the sink. The recycling logo is painted on the side. With the napkin wrapped around her hand, she picks carefully through the pile of bottles and cans until she finds what she's looking for.
Here.
She holds up a simple plastic water bottle. It's empty save for a few drops of water sloshing around the bottom. What is it?
I found this in the incinerator yesterday. We burn our garbage daily. I pulled it out because it belongs in the recycling. When I picked it up, I got some of the contents on my hands. It's not water. The texture is more like oil.
But what makes you think it's the poison?
Because I felt ill all yesterday after I touched it. The same exact symptoms you spoke of. What if it's the poison? What if the killer tried to throw it away?
But it's just the water bottle you happened to find. You may have been sick for some other reason.
No one in this house puts recycling in the incinerator. Mr. Otten has very strict rules, and we've always followed them. This is the only time I've ever seen something out of place. Please, just look at it!
I take the wrapped bottle from her, being careful not to touch the plastic. It looks innocent enough, but if she's right, then there's only one person who could have poisoned Mr. Otten. Let's take this to Detective Gursky. Sophia nods in agreement. The two of us hurry down the hall and into the main lobby where we find Detective Gursky and Aki talking with each other.
Whoa, you two look like you're in a hurry.
Yeah, I think we have our key piece of evidence. I hold up the bottle for Detective Gursky and Aki to see.
And what is it?
It's the poison! Or what's left of it, at least.
It'll be easier if I just explain to you who did it.
Fair enough. So who did it?
Who killed Mr. Otten? It was Kevin.
The IT guy?
But how did he do it?
He poisoned Mr. Otten's cognac, most likely. He wanted it to look like someone from the outside poisoned it before it even arrived at the house, so he picked something that Mr. Otten would lock up in the office.
How'd he get into the office? I thought no one was allowed in.
That may be true for Sophia and Liam, but Kevin controls all the security in the house. I bet he has a master code that can open any door.
Is that true?
Yes, he's never used the master code, but it does exist.
So he had means and opportunity. What about a motive?
Why did he do it? He did it for revenge.
Revenge? For what?
I hold up the papers I found in the security room. Destroying his family's business, of course. I found these in the security room. I hand the papers to Detective Gursky and he rifles through them, scanning each page briefly with his eyes.
What am I looking at?
Proof of ownership. Mr. Otten owned quite a few loan agencies under assumed names. He gave out student loans to families like Kevin's, then changed the interest rate without warning, putting them into more debt than they could handle. The debt that he supposedly rescued Kevin's family from was one that he created himself.
So Kevin would bear a grudge against Mr. Otten for cheating his family and using him.
That's a good enough motive for me, and he's the only person with the means to do it.
Sophia found this in the incinerator. We think he carried the poison in this bottle and then tried to destroy the evidence.
Meaning that we'll probably find his fingerprints all over it.
A frantic beeping noise interrupts our discussion.
What is that?
The house is coming out of lockdown. Kevin must be unlocking all the doors.
I groan. Of course, he can see us. I'm holding his stupid murder weapon in my hand. He probably knows we've got him figured out.
But Kevin isn't going to leave through the front. We'd never let him past us. Sophia, what other exits are there?
There's an emergency door in the museum.
Detective Gursky and Aki exchange horrified glances.
Li Mei!
Is there any way to lock all the doors again?
There's a panic box upstairs that...
Don't explain it, just go!
Sophia turns and dashes up the stairs while the rest of us race towards the museum. Detective Gursky grabs the handle on the door and pulls, but the lock by the door beeps stubbornly. He pounds on it with his fist.
Kevin, we know you're in there!
No response.
Kevin!
Aki glances at Naoki and nods. He nods in return before punching in a string of numbers into the box beside the door. The box rewards us with a friendly beep and a click. Detective Gursky kicks the door open, and we rush in.
Don't move!
Kevin stands across the room from us, one hand firmly on Li Mei's shoulder, and the other holding a knife to her throat.
Kevin, it's okay.
Detective Gursky holds his hands up for Kevin to see.
We're just going to talk.
What if I don't want to talk?
Kevin shakes his head vehemently.
I'm not stupid.
No, you're very intelligent. You should know that Sophia's locking the doors and there's nowhere to go. So why don't you just put that knife down and let us talk?
Kevin's gaze darts back and forth between us and the exit.
You're lying.
Aki steps forward slowly, hands held into the air.
Kevin, please. Just let her go.
Kevin's expression softens for a brief moment, but he doesn't release Li Mei.
You think I'm gonna give up my only bargaining chip?
He presses the tip of the knife to Li Mei's neck. A small bead of blood appears where the knife has punctured her skin. It runs down the side of her neck slowly, leaving a single crimson trail on her pale skin. Li Mei's body shudders, and her eyes grow dull. In a single fluid motion, she snatches the knife from Kevin's hand and spins around, pushing him to the ground. Without hesitation, she raises the knife above her head and sinks the blade into his back.
Ah!
Kevin stares at Li Mei with muted disbelief. His entire body begins to shake, and he collapses to the ground. Blood pours from his cut, seeping into his clothes and creeping across the floor, and I find myself unable to do anything. My body is frozen in shock. The world around me is fuzzy, distant. I see Detective Gursky kneeling beside Kevin. He's shouting something at Naoki, but I can't understand what he's saying. Aki rushes forward and wraps her arms around Li Mei. This is the first time I've seen Aki look so frightened. Li Mei stares at Kevin's motionless body as if she's never seen him before. The knife in her hand slips from her fingers and falls to the floor with a dull clatter. This can't be happening. There's no way this is happening. I can hear my own heart pounding against my ribcage as blood rushes through my head. The world is starting to grow even fuzzier. I feel ill. I clutch at my stomach and stumble a few paces back. Kevin is dying, and my Kansei is soaking up every moment of it. I struggle to remain standing, but it's useless. As I fall forward, the world around me turns black. And there you have it, both variants of the Find the Killer end. The good ending, which was that one. I guess it's not good, but the better ending. And the bad ending where you just get locked in the basement. So, with that, having unlocked both the ST route and the Find the Killer end, I can finally go and do the true ending. So, next video I will go through that path and we'll see what the true ending really is.